Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars. The New Horizon was not a warship. It was a research vessel, built for exploring and learning. Jake had been its captain for 5 years now, and he loved his job. He got to see new worlds and meet different alien species almost every week. "Captain, we're getting close to the Kepler system," said his science officer, Dr. Lisa Harper. She was a smart woman who studied alien life forms. Lisa had joined his crew 3 years ago, and Jake trusted her completely. "Good. Set us down on the 3rd planet." "The readings show it might have some interesting plant life," Jake replied. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ships. Engines. Jake's crew was small but skilled. Besides Lisa, he had a pilot, an engineer, and 2 research assistants. One of his assistants was a Centauri named Zek, who had blue skin and 4 arms. The other was a vegan female called Nira, who looked almost human except for her silver eyes. Zek turned from his control panel. "Captain Morrison, the planet looks safe. No dangerous weather or radiation." "Thanks, Zek." "Lisa, what do you think we'll find down there?" Lisa smiled. "The scans show some unusual energy readings from the plant life. It could be a new form of photosynthesis. This could be really important for our food production research." This was typical work for humans in the galaxy. For over 200 years, humans had been part of the Galactic Federation. Most alien species knew humans as peaceful people who loved to learn and explore. Humans ran hospitals, schools, and research centers across the galaxy. They were good at solving problems and helping different species work together. Jake remembered his grandfather's stories about the early days when humans first met aliens. Back then, some species had been worried about humans. But over time, everyone learned that humans were friendly and helpful. Now, most aliens actually preferred working with humans because they were fair and honest. "Captain, we have a message coming in from Earth," said his pilot, Tony Blake. "Put it through," Jake said. The face of Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the screen. She was in charge of Earth's small defense fleet. Jake had met her a few times at Federation meetings. She always seemed calm and professional. "Hello, Jake. How's the exploration going?" "Great, Admiral. We're about to study some new plant life in the Kepler system. What can I do for you?" "Just checking in. We've been getting some reports about increased military activity in the outer systems." "Nothing to worry about, but keep your eyes open," Jake nodded. "What kind of military activity?" "The Zephyrians have been moving more ships around than usual. Probably just training exercises, but you know how it is." Jake did know. The Zephyrians were a warrior species that controlled a large empire. They were always building more ships and conquering new worlds. Most species in the galaxy stayed away from them, including humans. The Zephyrian Empire was far from human space, so there had never been any real problems between them. "We'll be careful, Admiral. Thanks for the warning." "Good. Take care out there, Jake." The transmission ended, and Jake turned back to his crew. "You heard that, everyone. Let's do our work and stay alert." 3 days later, they were still on the planet studying the strange plants. Lisa had discovered that the plants could store energy in a completely new way. This discovery could help feed people across the galaxy more efficiently. "This is amazing, Jake," Lisa said as she worked in her lab. "These plants can grow in almost any soil and need very little water. If we can understand how they work, we could solve food shortages on dozens of worlds." "That's why I love this job," Jake replied. "We're not just exploring, we're helping people." Nira looked up from her research notes. "Captain, this is why I wanted to work with humans. My people always said humans care about helping others more than making money or gaining power." Zek agreed. "On my world, human doctors saved my brother's life when he was sick. They didn't ask for payment. They just wanted to help. Jake felt proud of his species, but he also felt humble. Humans had learned long ago that working together and helping others made everyone stronger. It wasn't always easy, but it was the right thing to do. On the fourth day, they received another message. This time, it wasn't from Admiral Sullivan. It was from the Federation Council on Centauri Prime. All human vessels, this is an official notice, said the Centauri Council member. The Zephyrian Empire has been making aggressive moves toward the border systems. All civilian ships should avoid the Outer Rim territories until further notice. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Outer Rim was where many human colonies were located. These were peaceful farming and mining communities with families and children. Tony set course for home. "We need to get back to Federation space," Jake ordered. "Yes, sir," Tony replied, already working on the navigation dot as they traveled through space. Jake couldn't stop thinking about the warning. He had visited many of the human colonies in the Outer Rim. They were beautiful places where people lived. Simple, happy lives. Most of the colonists were farmers, teachers, artists, and small business owners. They had no military training and no weapons beyond basic tools. "Captain, you look worried," Lisa said, joining him on the bridge. "I am worried. Those colonies have no way to defend themselves if the Zephyrians decide to attack. But why would they attack human colonies? We've never had any conflicts with them." Jake shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe they think we're weak because we're peaceful." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Are we weak, Jake?" It was a good question. Humans hadn't fought a real war in over 2 centuries. Most people had forgotten what war was like. The human military was small and mostly used for rescuing people from natural disasters or protecting trade routes from pirates. "I don't think we're weak," Jake said finally. "I think we just choose to be peaceful. There's a difference." "What do you mean?" Jake thought about his grandfather's stories again. His grandfather had been a soldier in the old days, before humans joined the Federation. He used to say that humans were naturally good at fighting, but they were even better at choosing not to fight. "My grandfather once told me that the strongest person in the room is often the one who doesn't need to prove it." Lisa nodded slowly. "I hope you're right, for the sake of those colonists." As the new horizon traveled through the darkness of space, Jake wondered if his grandfather had been right. He hoped they would never have to find out. But deep in his heart, he had a feeling that peaceful times were about to end. Behind them, in the distant Zephyrian Empire, General Vex was studying reports about human colonies. The reports all said the same thing. Humans were weak, divided, and had no real military force. The general smiled as he planned his attack. Soon, the Zephyrian Empire would have new slaves and new worlds to control. Neither Jake nor General Vex knew that they were about to discover just how wrong everyone was about humanity's true nature. Dan Parker was having breakfast with his family when the alarm started ringing. He lived on New Eden, a beautiful farming colony that grew food for dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Dan was the colony administrator, which meant he helped solve problems and made sure everyone was happy and safe. "Dad, what's that noise?" asked his 10-year-old daughter, Amy. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. Let me check." Dan walked to his communication device and pressed the emergency button. "This is Administrator Parker. What's the situation?" "Sir, we have unknown ships approaching the planet. They're big, and they're not responding to our messages," came the voice of his communication officer, Pete Williams. Dan felt his stomach drop. New Eden had 3 million people, including many families with children. The colony had no weapons except for some old mining equipment and a few security officers with basic stunners. "Keep trying to contact them, Pete. I'm coming to the command center." Dan kissed his wife, Carol, and daughter goodbye. Stay inside until I know what's happening, okay? Be careful, Dan, Carol said, worry clear in her voice. The command center was in the middle of New Eden's main city. When Dan arrived, he found Pete and the other staff members looking scared and confused. On the main screen, they could see massive ships in orbit around their planet. Have they responded to any of our messages? Dan asked. No, sir. We've tried everything. We even offered to help them if they need supplies or repairs. Dan looked at the ships on the screen. They were dark and angular, completely different from the peaceful Federation vessels he was used to seeing. These ships looked like they were built for war. Sir, we're getting a transmission, Pete said suddenly. Put it on screen. The image that appeared made Dan's blood run cold. It was a tall, reptilian creature with dark scales and yellow eyes. The creature wore military armor and had scars across its face. Humans of New Eden, the creature said in a harsh voice. I am General Vex of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately, or we will take it by force. Dan stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. General Vex, I'm Dan Parker, the administrator of this colony. We're peaceful people. We have no weapons and no military. Why do you want our world? General Vex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your world has rich soil and good water. Your people will make excellent slaves for our empire. You have 1 hour to surrender, or we will demonstrate what happens to those who resist the Zephyrian Empire. The transmission ended, leaving Dan and his staff in shocked silence. Sir, what do we do? Pete asked. Dan thought quickly. New Eden had no way to fight back against warships. Their only hope was to try to negotiate and buy time for help to arrive. Send a message to the Federation Council and to Admiral Sullivan on Earth. Tell them what's happening. And try to contact General Vex again. Maybe we can work something out. For the next hour, Dan tried everything he could think of. He offered the Zephyrians trade agreements, medical supplies, and even a percentage of their crop production. But General Vex wasn't interested in negotiation. Your hour is up, human, the general said in his final transmission. Now you will learn the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. The attack began without warning. Bright beams of energy came down from the sky, destroying buildings and killing hundreds of people in seconds. Don watched in horror as the school where his daughter Amy went to learn was turned into burning rubble. Pete, get everyone to the emergency shelters, Dan shouted over the sound of explosions. Sir, the shelters won't protect us from orbital bombardment. Then we'll die trying to save as many people as possible. Dan ran through the burning streets, helping people find safety. He saw his neighbors, friends, and coworkers running in panic. Many were already dead or wounded. The sweet smell of the crops that New Eden was famous for was now mixed with smoke and death. Meanwhile, in space, Captain Jake Morrison was bringing the New Horizon back to Federation territory when they received an emergency transmission. This is New Eden Colony. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack by Zephyrian forces. They're killing civilians. Please, anyone who can hear this, help us. Jake felt his heart stop. He recognized the voice. It was Dan Parker, whom he had met several times during his exploration missions. Dan was a good man with a family. Tony, change course immediately. Head for New Eden at maximum speed. Sir, that will take us 6 hours, even at full speed, Tony replied. Then we go as fast as we can. Dr. Lisa Harper ran to the bridge. Jake, I'm picking up massive energy signatures. From New Eden. It looks like orbital bombardment. How bad? Lisa's face was pale. Bad, very bad. The energy readings suggest they're targeting civilian areas, not just military installations. When the New Horizon finally reached New Eden, they found a scene of horror. The beautiful farming colony was burning. Whole cities had been reduced to ash. Zephyrian ground forces were hunting down survivors and loading them onto transport ships. "My God," whispered Nira, her silver eyes wide with shock. Jake activated the ship's recorder. "Document everything," he told Lisa. "The galaxy needs to see what they've done." They watched as Zephyrian soldiers dragged human families from their hiding places. Children were separated from their parents. Old people who couldn't work were shot without mercy. The lucky ones were put in chains and loaded onto slave ships. "Captain, I'm detecting survivors in the southern continent," Zek reported. "About 1,000 people are hiding in the mountains. Can we help them? Not without being detected by the Zephyrian ships. They'll destroy us if we try to land." Jake made the hardest decision of his life. "We document everything we can, then we get this information back to Earth. These people are counting on us to tell the galaxy what happened here." For 2 days, they watched and recorded. Jake saw Dan Parker one last time, being dragged onto a slave ship. Dan looked directly at the New Horizons camera, and Jake could see the message in his eyes. "Tell everyone what you saw here." On the 3rd day, the Zephyrians finished their work. New Eden was empty, except for the dead. 3 million people had lived there. Now, only 500,000 were left alive as slaves. The rest were gone forever. Jake sent an emergency transmission to Earth, using the strongest signal his ship could produce. "Admiral Sullivan, this is Captain Morrison. New Eden is gone. 3 million people are dead or enslaved. The Zephyrians have committed genocide. I have complete recordings of everything. We're coming home." The response came quickly. Admiral Sullivan's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Jake, get back to Earth immediately. Bring everything you recorded." "And Jake?" "Yes, Admiral?" "The Federation Council is meeting in emergency session. Things are about to change." As the New Horizon left the burning remains of New Eden, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. It was a cold, focused anger that seemed to come from deep inside his very DNA. He thought about Dan Parker's daughter, Amy, and wondered if she was still alive somewhere in a Zephyrian slave ship. Behind him, Lisa was analyzing the recordings. "Jake, the weapons they used were designed to cause maximum suffering. They could have killed everyone quickly, but they chose to make it slow and painful. Why would they do that? To send a message. They want other human colonies to surrender. Without a fight." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "And they don't know humans very well." Across human space, the news of New Eden spread like wildfire. On Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan watched Jake's recordings with tears of rage in her eyes. In the Federation Council, human representatives demanded justice. But most importantly, in the deep bunkers and secret facilities that most humans had forgotten existed, ancient machines began to wake up. The Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans were weak because they chose peace. Soon they would learn the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. Sleeping god of war was beginning to stir. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the Global Defense Council in the deepest bunker beneath Earth's capital. The room hadn't been used for a real emergency in over 200 years. Now, representatives from every human world sat around the ancient table, their faces grim as they watched Jake Morrison's recordings from New Eden. The images were horrible. Children running from explosions. Families torn apart. Dan Parker being dragged away in chains, his eyes pleading with the camera to remember what happened to his people. "How many dead?" asked General Robert Kim from the Mars Defense Force. 2.5 million confirmed dead. 500,000 taken as slaves, Kate replied, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. "And what was the Federation Council's response?" asked Dr. Helen Torres, the representative from Luna Colony. Kate's expression darkened. They offered to send a diplomatic protest. They suggested we try to negotiate for the return of the slaves. The room exploded in angry voices. For a moment, Kate let them vent their rage. These people needed to feel the full weight of what had happened before they could make the decision that would change everything. Enough, Kate said quietly, but her voice carried across the room. The question before us is simple. Do we let the Zephyrians get away with genocide, or do we remind the galaxy why our ancestors conquered an entire planet before we ever left it? An old man named Frank Bell spoke up. He was over 90 years old and represented the outer colonies. Admiral, my grandson was on New Eden. He was 7 years old. If he's still alive, he's a slave now. Frank's voice shook, but his eyes were hard as steel. What do you need from us? Kate looked around the room. I need you to authorize the activation of the Emergency War Powers Act. I need you to give, and me permission to wake up everything we've kept sleeping for the past 2 centuries. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, things began to change across human space. On Earth, massive factories that had been making civilian goods suddenly switched to military production. The plans had always been there, hidden in computer systems and stored in sealed vaults. Now, those plans came alive. Dr. Lisa Harper found herself reassigned from the New Horizon to a new position as Director of Xenological Warfare. She didn't even know such a position existed until Kate Sullivan called her personally. Lisa, I need you to figure out how to fight the Zephyrians, Kate said during their meeting. I need to know their weaknesses, their psychology, everything. Admiral, I'm a scientist, not a military strategist. You're a human scientist who has studied alien behavior for years. Right now, that makes you one of the most valuable people in our species. Jake Morrison got a call, too. He was promoted to Commodore and given command of the first battle group that would be ready for action. When he protested that he was just an exploration captain, Kate laughed bitterly. Jake, your great-grandfather was Admiral William Morrison. He commanded the Pacific Fleet during the Resource Wars of 2156. Your grandfather was Colonel James Morrison, who led the assault on the Martian separatists in 2203. Military leadership is in your blood. You just never needed it before. Jake felt something stir inside him, like a sleeping memory coming awake. What kind of ships will I be commanding? Come with me, Kate said. She led him to a viewing platform overlooking the largest shipyard in the solar system. Jake expected to see the usual civilian ships and small patrol vessels. Instead, he saw something that took his breath away. Massive warships were under construction, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor and bristling with weapons he didn't recognize. They were sleek and dangerous, like predators made of metal and energy. We've been building these in secret for 50 years, Kate explained. Not because we planned to use them, but because we knew someday we might have to. The plans go back to the first days when humans met hostile aliens. We hoped we'd never need them. How many? The first battle group will have 20 ships. We'll have 100 more ready within 6 months, and 500 within a year if we need them. Jake stared at the ships. Kate, where did the designs come from? These don't look like anything I've ever seen before. Kate smiled grimly. They're based on human psychology and tactics. We studied every war our species ever fought, from ancient battles with swords and shields to the space conflicts of the early colonies. Then we asked a simple question. If humans had to fight aliens with superior numbers and technology, how would we do it? The answer was in the ships. They were built for speed, stealth, and coordinated attacks. Unlike the massive, heavily armed vessels that most alien species preferred, human warships were designed to work together like a pack of wolves. Lieutenant Commander Ben Rivers was pulled from his job as a military history teacher to become a strategic planner. He had spent years studying battles from Earth's past, thinking of them as ancient history. Now, those battles became blueprints for fighting aliens. The key is mobility and surprise, Ben explained to a room full of newly promoted officers. The Zephyrians fight like most alien species. They build big ships, put lots of armor and weapons on them, and try to overpower their enemies. But humans have always won by being smarter, not stronger. He showed them tactical displays of famous human battles. At Thermopylae 300, Spartans held off thousands of Persians by choosing the right ground. At Midway, a smaller American fleet defeated the Japanese by using intelligence and timing. At the Battle of Luna, our ancestors defeated the corporate alliance by making them fight on our terms, not theirs. The officers listened carefully. Many of them were civilians just weeks before, but they were learning quickly. The knowledge seemed to be there already, buried in their minds, waiting to be awakened out on Mars. Weapon factories that had been producing mining equipment switched to making military gear. The same technology used to cut through asteroid rock was modified to slice through alien ship hulls. Scientists who had been working on peaceful projects found themselves designing new ways to fight. Amy Foster had been a security officer on a small trading station. Now she was a commander in charge of training the first human Marines in 2 centuries. The training came naturally to her recruits, as if they were remembering something they had always known. "We're not trying to be like other species," Amy told her Marines. "We're humans. We adapt. We learn. We survive. And when someone threatens our families, we make sure they regret it." The Zephyrians had no idea what was happening. Their spies in Federation space reported that humans were having meetings and making angry speeches, but nothing seemed to be changing. The human colonies looked just as defenseless as before. General Vex was pleased with the success at New Eden. He decided to attack another human world to demonstrate that the Federation couldn't protect their members. He chose a mining colony called Hope's End, which had only a few 100,000 people. But when his fleet arrived at Hope's End, they found something unexpected. The colony was empty. All the civilians had been evacuated, and in their place was a small human fleet. Commodore Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth's Vengeance. Around him were 19 other ships, each one crewed by humans who had discovered they had a talent for war. "General Vex, this is Commodore Morrison of the Human Defense Force. You are ordered to leave this system immediately." Vex's laughing face appeared on screen. "Foolish human, you have 20 small ships. I have 50 large ones. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick." Jake's expression never changed. "General, you murdered 3 million civilians on New Eden. You made slaves of women and children. You picked a fight with the wrong species." The battle that followed shocked the galaxy. Human ships moved like they were alive, coordinating their attacks with precision that no alien species had ever seen. They struck at the Zephyrian fleet from multiple directions at once, their weapons cutting through armor that should have been impenetrable. Within 2 hours, General Vex's mighty fleet was destroyed. The few surviving ships fled back to Zephyrian space with news that would terrify their empire. The humans were no longer prey. The message Jake sent after the battle was broadcast across the galaxy. "This is Commodore Morrison of the Human Defense Force. The Zephyrian Empire has committed acts of genocide against human civilians. As of today, humanity considers itself at war with the Zephyrian Empire. Any Zephyrian military vessel found in human space will be destroyed. Any world that harbors Zephyrian forces will be considered an enemy of humanity. We tried peace. You chose war. Now you'll learn why our ancestors conquered a planet before we reached the stars." The sleeping god of war was fully awake now, and it was very, very angry. The destruction of General Vex's fleet sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian Empire. Emperor Korvac, the supreme ruler of the Zephyrians, called an emergency meeting of his war council. The massive throne room was filled with his best generals and admirals, all of them trying to understand how a small human force had destroyed 50 warships so easily. "Explain to me how General Vex lost 50 ships to 20 human vessels," Emperor Korvac demanded, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Admiral Vex, the Empire's top military commander, studied the battle recordings. "My Emperor, the humans, fought like no species we have ever encountered. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, as if they shared one mind. They attacked from multiple directions simultaneously and focused their fire on our weakest points." "Are you telling me that humans are better warriors than Zephyrians?" The Emperor's yellow eyes glowed with anger. "No, my Emperor, but they are different. We fight with strength and aggression. They fight with cunning and precision. It's like they studied our tactics and found ways to defeat them." The Emperor was not pleased. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered dozens of worlds using the same strategy: build massive fleets, overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower, and crush any resistance. It had worked against every species they had ever fought. "Then we will show them true Zephyrian might," Emperor Korvac declared. "Gather the Grand Fleet, 500 ships. We will burn every human world to ash." But while the Zephyrians planned their massive assault, humans were already 3 steps ahead. Dr. Lisa Harper had been studying Zephyrian psychology and culture, looking for weaknesses. What she found surprised her. "Jake, I think I know why the Zephyrians have been so successful," Lisa said during a strategy meeting on the Earth's vengeance. "They're not actually that good at fighting." Commodore Morrison raised an eyebrow. "They've conquered half the galaxy, Lisa." "Yes, but look at who they conquered. Species that fight the same way they do. Big ships, direct attacks, trying to overpower the enemy. The Zephyrians win because they have more ships and bigger guns, not because they're tactically superior." Admiral Kate Sullivan, who was attending the meeting by video link, leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that no one has ever really challenged them before. Every species they've fought has tried to match their strength. We're the first to try something different." Commander Amy Foster, who had been promoted to lead the ground forces, smiled grimly. "So we keep being different." The human strategy evolved rapidly. Instead of building a few massive fleets to fight big battles, they created dozens of small, fast task forces. Each group had only 5 to 10 ships, but they could strike anywhere in Zephyrian space and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Ben Rivers, now a full crew, coordinated these attacks from a secret command center on Luna. He had studied every successful guerrilla campaign in human history and adapted those tactics for space warfare. "We're not trying to destroy their entire military," Ben explained to his staff. "We're trying to make them afraid. Every supply convoy they send could be attacked. Every patrol could disappear. Every outpost could be destroyed. We want them to fear the darkness between the stars." The campaign began with small strikes. Human task forces hit Zephyrian mining operations, destroyed supply ships, and attacked isolated military bases. Each attack was perfectly planned and executed with surgical precision. The Zephyrians tried to respond, but humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. When they sent large fleets to protect important targets, the humans attacked somewhere else. When they spread their forces out to cover more territory, the humans concentrated their attacks and overwhelmed the smaller Zephyrian groups. Emperor Korvac was furious. How can 20 human ships be in 5 different systems at the same time? "They can't, my Emperor," Admiral Vex replied. "But they make us think they can. They attack so quickly and disappear so fast that we never know where they really are." Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Harper, had discovered something even more important than Zephyrian tactics. She had been studying the Empire's politics and found deep cracks in their society. Jake, the Zephyrian Empire isn't as united as they want us to believe, Lisa reported. Half of their territory is made up of conquered species who hate them. The other half is controlled by regional governors who are more loyal to themselves than to the Emperor. Can we use that? Already working on it. Lisa had teams of humans making contact with rebel groups throughout Zephyrian space. They offered weapons, training, and support to anyone willing to fight against the Empire. Soon, Zephyrian forces found themselves fighting not just humans, but uprisings on dozens of worlds. The psychological warfare was just as important as the military attacks. Humans broadcast messages throughout Zephyrian space, showing the recordings from New Eden and explaining why they were fighting. "We are not conquerors," one broadcast said. "We are liberators." The Zephyrian Empire murdered 3 million innocent people, including children. They made slaves of families. They chose to make humanity their enemy. Now we will free every world they have enslaved and give justice to every people they have oppressed. These messages had a powerful effect. Many species that had been conquered by the Zephyrians began to see humans as heroes rather than enemies. Some even switched sides completely, offering to help the human war effort. The turning point came when Admiral Morrison led a daring raid on the Zephyrian capital world itself. 50 human ships appeared in the system without warning, striking at military targets and broadcasting messages of defiance directly to the Zephyrian people. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Human Defense Force," Jake announced as his ships destroyed orbital weapons platforms and military bases. "Your empire attacked peaceful civilians. Your leaders make war on families and children. Today you see that humanity will not stand for genocide. We will fight until every slave is free and every murderer faces justice." The raid lasted only 2 hours, but the psychological impact was enormous. The Zephyrian capital was supposed to be impregnable, protected by hundreds of ships and defensive stations. Yet humans had appeared from nowhere, struck at will, and disappeared before the main fleet could respond. Emperor Korvac was beside himself with rage. How did they get past our defenses? "We're still investigating, my Emperor," Admiral Vex said nervously. "But it appears they used some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before." What the Zephyrians didn't understand was that human ships didn't need advanced stealth technology. They used something much more effective: human intelligence. Spies and sympathizers throughout the Empire fed information to human forces, telling them exactly where the defenses were weakest and when the best times to attack would be. Commander Amy Foster was leading ground operations on liberated worlds, helping former slaves rebuild their societies. What she found amazed her. "These people have been waiting for someone to help them for decades," she reported to Admiral Sullivan. "They're not just grateful. They're eager to join our cause. We're not just fighting the Zephyrians anymore. We're leading a galactic revolution." The Zephyrian Empire was falling apart from within. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds. Regional governors declared independence. Some Zephyrian military units surrendered to human forces rather than continue fighting. But Emperor Korvac still had one card to play. He gathered the remnants of his fleet, nearly 300 ships, for a final desperate assault on Earth itself. "If we cannot defeat the humans in battle," he declared, "we will destroy their home world and end their species forever." Human intelligence detected the fleet's movement almost immediately. Admiral Sullivan called an emergency meeting of the High Command. "They're coming straight for Earth with everything they have left," she announced. "This is their final gamble." "How long do we have?" asked Admiral Morrison. 6 days. Colonel Rivers studied the tactical situation. "They're hoping to force us into a direct battle where their superior numbers will matter. It's exactly the kind of fight we've been avoiding. Then we don't give them that fight, Kate said firmly. We end this war on our terms, not theirs. The final battle would not be fought the way the Zephyrians expected. Humanity had learned too much about the art of war to make it that simple. The sleeping god of war was fully awake now, and it had centuries of human cunning and creativity at its disposal. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn why humans had become the dominant species on their own world long before they ever reached the stars. Emperor Korvac's grand fleet moved through space like a dark storm cloud. 300 warships heading straight for Earth. The Emperor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the stars pass by. This would be his final victory. He would destroy the human homeworld and end their rebellion once and for all. My Emperor, we will reach the Sol system in 6 hours, reported Admiral Vex. Good. Prepare the planet-killer weapons. I want Earth to burn so brightly that every species in the galaxy will see it and remember what happens to those who defy the Zephyrian Empire. But as the Zephyrian fleet approached Earth, they found something unexpected. The system seemed almost empty. A few patrol ships fled as soon as they detected the approaching fleet. There were no massive defensive formations, no desperate last stands. It was almost too easy. Where are their fleets? Korvac demanded. Unknown, my Emperor. Our scouts report only light defenses around Earth and Mars. What Emperor Korvac didn't know was that Admiral Kate Sullivan had planned for this moment. The human fleets weren't waiting in Earth's orbit like sitting ducks. They were positioned throughout the solar system, hidden behind asteroids, moons, and space stations. More importantly, human ships were already in position throughout Zephyrian space. Kate, a Zephyrian fleet is entering the outer system, reported Colonel Ben Rivers from his command center on Luna. Admiral Sullivan nodded calmly. Begin Operation Homecoming. Across the galaxy, human task forces struck simultaneously at every major Zephyrian world. While Emperor Korvac was leading his fleet toward Earth, his empire was being torn apart behind him. Human forces attacked Zephyrian shipyards, military bases, government centers, and supply depots. In a single coordinated assault, humanity crippled the Empire's ability to wage war. Admiral Jake Morrison led the attack on the Zephyrian capital world. His fleet appeared from hyperspace with perfect timing, catching the Skeleton Defense Force completely off guard. This is Admiral Morrison to all Zephyrian forces. Jake broadcast as his ships destroyed the orbital defenses. Your Emperor has abandoned you to attack Earth. Your empire is falling. Surrender now, and you will be treated with mercy. Continue fighting, and you will share your Emperor's fate. One by one, Zephyrian commanders began surrendering. They realized that they had been betrayed by their own leader, who had left them defenseless while he pursued his revenge against humanity. Back in the Sol system, Emperor Korvac was finally beginning to understand the trap he had fallen into. My Emperor, we're receiving reports from across the Empire, Admiral Vex said, his voice shaking. Human forces are attacking everywhere. Our shipyards are destroyed. The capital is under siege. Our provincial governors are surrendering. Impossible. How can they be attacking our empire when their fleets are here defending Earth? Sir, I don't think their main fleets are here. As if to prove Admiral Vex's point, the human forces that appeared to defend Earth were not the massive battle fleets the Zephyrians expected. Instead, fast attack ships emerged from hiding places throughout the system, striking at the Zephyrian fleet and disappearing before they could be caught. The battle for Earth became a nightmare for the Zephyrians. Human ships seemed to be everywhere, at once appearing from behind asteroids, emerging from the shadow of Jupiter's moons, and striking from directions the Zephyrians never expected. The humans fought like they knew every rock and piece of debris in their home system. Commander, Amy Foster led boarding parties that captured Zephyrian ships from the inside. Her Marines moved through the enemy vessels like ghosts using their radar. Knowledge of alien psychology to confuse and terrify the Zephyrian crews. Remember, Amy told her troops, we're not here to massacre them. We're here to end this war. Take prisoners when you can, but protect yourselves first. The tide of battle turned quickly. Emperor Korvac watched in horror as his mighty fleet was picked apart by human tactics he couldn't understand. His ships were bigger and more heavily armed, but they couldn't hit enemies that refused to fight fair. My Emperor, we must retreat, Admiral Vex urged. We're losing ships too quickly. Never. I will not flee from these weak humans. But the choice was taken away from him. Dr. Lisa Harper had been working on something special for Emperor Korvac. Using her knowledge of Zephyrian psychology, she had developed a message that would break his spirit. Emperor Korvac. Lisa's voice came over all communication channels. This is Dr. Lisa Harper of the Human Defense Force. I have something to show you. The screen filled with images that made the Emperor's blood run cold. They were recordings from the liberated slave ships, showing human children and families who had been rescued from Zephyrian captivity. But more importantly, they showed something else. These are the people of New Eden, Lisa continued. The people you thought you had broken. Dan Parker is here, Emperor. So is his daughter Amy. They survived your genocide, and they want to speak to you. Dan Parker appeared on screen. He looked older and tired, but his eyes burned with determination. Emperor Korvac, you tried to destroy us because you thought we were weak. You were wrong. We survived because we're human. We adapt, we endure, and we never forget. Young Amy Parker stepped into view beside her father. You hurt my friends and my family, but we're still here, and you're not going to hurt anyone else ever again. The psychological impact on Emperor Korvac was devastating. He had believed that destroying New Eden would break human spirit. Instead, it had awakened something far more dangerous. Sir, we have to go now, Admiral Vex insisted as another group of Zephyrian ships was destroyed. We've lost 2/3 of the fleet. Emperor Korvac finally gave the order to retreat, but it was too late. Admiral Morrison's main fleet had arrived from their successful campaign in Zephyrian space. The human ships surrounded what remained of the Emperor's forces. Emperor Korvac, this is Admiral Morrison. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender. Now, and your surviving crews will be spared. For a moment, it looked like the Emperor might choose to fight to the death. But then something unexpected happened. Admiral Vex and the other Zephyrian commanders turned against their leader. Emperor Korvac, you have brought our empire to ruin with your pride and cruelty, Admiral Vex declared. We surrender to the humans. The war ended not with a glorious battle, but with a broken emperor being arrested by his own officers. 6 months later, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the Galactic Federation Council. The Great Assembly Hall was packed with representatives from hundreds of species, all eager to hear what humanity would do with their victory. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Kate began, humanity did not seek this war. It was forced upon us by the criminal actions of the Zephyrian Empire. But now that it is over, we must decide what kind of galaxy we want to live in. She gestured to a group of former Zephyrian officials who sat in special seats. The Zephyrian people have chosen new leaders who reject the policies of conquest and slavery. These leaders have agreed to make reparations to all the worlds their empire damaged and to free all remaining slaves. The hall erupted in surprised murmurs. Most species expected humanity to demand harsh punishment or even to replace the Zephyrian Empire with their own. But humanity wants more than just peace, Kate continued. We want justice. we propose the creation of a new organization, the Galactic Defense Alliance. This alliance will protect any world from aggression, regardless of their size or military strength. No species will ever again face genocide alone. Admiral Jake Morrison, now promoted to lead the new organization, stepped forward. The Defense Alliance will be open to all peaceful species. We will not conquer worlds or force anyone to join us, but we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. Dr. Lisa Harper, who had become the Alliance's chief diplomat, added, "We have learned that diversity makes us stronger. Every species has something valuable to contribute. Our goal is to build a galaxy where differences are celebrated, not eliminated." 1 year after the war ended, Jake Morrison returned to New Eden. The world was being rebuilt, not just as a farming colony, but as a symbol of recovery and hope. Dan Parker, who had been elected as the new planetary governor, met Jake at the spaceport. "Thank you for not forgetting us," Dan said as they walked through the new city being built where the old one had burned. "We could never forget," Jake replied. "What happened here changed everything. It reminded us who we really are." They visited the memorial that had been built for those who died in the Zephyrian attack. But it wasn't just a monument to human victims. It honored all the beings who had suffered under the Empire's cruelty, and it carried a simple message: never again. Young Amy Parker, now 12 years old, was playing with friends from a dozen different species. Human children, Centauri youngsters, vegan kids with their silver eyes, and even some young Zephyrians whose parents had rejected the old Empire's ways. "Look at them," Dan said with a smile. "They don't see enemies. They just see friends." Jake watched the children play and thought about the future. Humanity had proven they could be the galaxy's most fearsome warriors when necessary. But more importantly, they had chosen to be something better. Commander Amy Foster, who now led the Alliance's peacekeeping forces, joined them at the memorial. "Admiral, we just received word from the Outer Rim. 3 new species have requested ally.